Hello. Thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Abuja. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks. I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Osoa in Abuja brings you that story.
The Lagos Mass Rail is a rapid transit system to be used by residents of the Nigerian commercial city when completed. The entire 27-kilometer stretch from Okokomaiko to Marina is expected to change the face of public transportation within the metropolis. With the train system to be powered by electricity and 13 kilometers of the rail tracks laid in the first phase, the state government is targeting a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Our correspondent, Dare Dowo, looks at the safety implications of the Blue Line project in the nation's first electrified rail system.
With the completion of infrastructure works in the first phase of the Blue Line project, the intracity rail line is expected to be fully tested before it's opened to commercial operations for passengers commuting on the corridor. But first, the question of safety has been raised given that the Blue Line is powered differently and the rail tracks will be fully electrified, the first of its kind in the country.
The state government had announced that electricity will be generated by an independent standalone facility, transmitted and distributed to the trains. In the case of the Blue Line, the trains will run on a 750 voltage, a high risk for trespassers. At the moment, there are no visible warning signs, but the state government has promised that in the coming days, there will be enough awareness.
This rail system is electrified, so we're going to have advocacy out there, let people understand, so that very close to start of commercial operations, we would be talking to people. Continuous advocacy will be going on from now till towards the end of the first quarter.
On this axis, there are rail crossings with elevated road structures built along the lines. Pedestrians are already using the bridge with the tracks fenced off. We asked some of the residents if they are aware of the electrified rail tracks.
Are you aware that there will be a train on this axis and it will run on electricity?
I'm not aware. I'm just hearing it for the first time.
Okay.
I thought it's a manual railway as usual. Despite the barricade. For example, if you look at Suru Alaba, as they are putting the barricade, people are breaking it and they are passing through up to Kuka's area down to this place. The only way the state of federal government can do it, we need a lot of pedestrian bridge.
At least there should be a caution sign there so that people will know, so that they will not be able to pass there as well.
The blue, red, and the other lines within the Lagos Mass Rail Transit system are expected to have a positive ripple effect on the state's economy, alleviate traffic pressure, and ease commuting in the country's commercial hub. Dare Idu, Channels Television News.
Well, joining me now is a senior lecturer from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Lagos, Dr. Olayinka Agunloye. Thank you for joining us on Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
How much of impact would you say this blue rail line will have on the transportation challenges being faced by commuters in Lagos?
The development of this rail line is a wonderful concept, wonderful project at the very right time by the Lagos State government, and that can have positive impacts on the residents of Lagos State. The travel time is going to be reduced. The cost of travel is going to be reasonable. The safety will be guaranteed for commuters. The sustainable development goals, about 3 of them will be achieved because of this rail development. And it is going to be an eco-friendly kind of transportation mode that we have. The accessibility too will be established. The issue of congestion will also be arrested. So it is a very good development that we have several positive impacts on the residents of Lagos State.
Now, would you say enough awareness, if we could use that word, has been created about the electrification of the Blue Line in Lagos?
As a transportation, the awareness is the government still has to do several levels of awareness. If you talk about awareness from social media, I will tell you that most people who use social media, they are aware of the associated risk. But when you look at it, when you just position it with the other levels of awareness, I will tell you that there is a need for the government to take the awareness to the grassroots, to take the awareness to the users, to take the awareness to the communities. The awareness level outside social media is not sufficient enough. And this is something that the government is expected to take very seriously before the commencement, before the operations of that particular service.
The red line from Ebutemeta to Agbado areas of the metropolis is almost ready. Is there a seamless connection, in your view, between these lines and other modes of transportation in the state?
To start with, when you talk about seamless connection, what we are looking at is to engender intermodalism. If you cannot engender intermodalism, which is the efficient and effective connectivity of the different modes of transport, if you cannot engender them in reality, you are on the point of multimodalism. So in my assessment as a transportation planning expert, I will tell you that it is 80% intermodalism that we have. But I believe with little effort from the government, they could achieve the reasonable level of that intermodalism that will really bring in the connectivity. You can have them in multiples and they are not connected. So it is just a few efforts from the government that will need to put everything together. But I will tell you that the infrastructure is on ground for that intermodal connection. The government should move ahead the multimodal provisions and see how they will come to that point of interconnectivity of the various modes, and that will now give us seamless connection.
All right, looks like a good place to let it go. Dr. Olayinka Agunloye, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on viewafrica.com. After the break, expected to double its population by 2050, Nigeria could become the world's third most populous nation. Experts warn that without proper planning, such growth would be unsustainable. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. The UN recently said that the world's population reached 8 billion people, and more than half of the population growth up to 2050 will come from 8 countries, 5 of them in Africa. In that time span, Nigeria is expected to double its population to 400 million people to become the world's third most populous nation. Experts warn that without proper planning, such growth could be unsustainable, as Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja, Nigeria.
2 years ago, Aisha Ali and her husband decided she would take a birth control injection after having 9 children.
I'm a petty trader, and my husband is a motorcycle rider. We want the best for our children, but don't make enough money. Sometimes Good Samaritans help us pay the children's school fees and buy us food.
The contraceptive suppresses ovulation for only a few years. Like Ali, many Nigerian women, especially those in rural areas, surpass the national birth rate of about 5 children per woman. The United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, says funding gaps, cultural bias, and so-called male dominance are major setbacks for family planning here. Evelyn Isienyi had 8 children before her husband passed away in 2018.
Even if my husband is alive, I don't want to get more children again because of hardship. Things is very difficult, mostly now.
This is why the UN, which marked the world population milestone of 8 billion in November, has voiced concerns that population growth, especially in Africa, is not sustainable. 8 countries worldwide are expected to account for more than half of the global population growth over the next 3 decades. 5 of them are in Africa.
There are major advancements happening, but one of the things that concerns us as the UN is that this progress is not received equally across board. So there are some citizens within countries who are denied access to basic health care. They're denied access to basic education. Their whole overall quality of life is affected negatively.
Nigeria has the 7th largest population in the world, and 95 million of its people live below $2.15 a day, according to World Bank data for 2022. In February, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari launched a national population policy to control high fertility rates and improve access to modern family planning tools. UN and Nigerian officials are working to educate people about family planning in rural areas, and the UN is calling on Nigeria to budget more money for family planning.
Since this year, we have a gap of 25 million, and that had to do with a lot of the economic downturn because of the COVID-19. We also have the issue around the Ukraine war and so forth that have affected donor contribution. A lot of the issue around family planning, particularly the commodity procurement, is very donor-driven, which is very risky for Nigeria.
Health officials say Nigeria needs $35 million a year to address family planning needs, but has earmarked only $50,000 for it in the national budget for next year. Civil society groups are calling for more allocations before the budget is approved by the National Assembly in December. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Thousands of people have been paying their respects to former Pope Benedict XVI at his lying-in state in the Vatican. He died on New Year's Eve at the age of 95, almost a decade after he stood down because of ill health. Pope Francis presided over Thursday's funeral, the first time a pope will be buried by his successor. As dawn broke over the Vatican, a queue had already formed at the edge of St. Peter's Square.
For the Catholic Christians, the turn of the year is also a sign of mourning for the deceased former Pope Benedict XVI. Around the world, bishops and priests called for prayer in New Year's Eve and New Year's prayers and paid tribute to the deceased. In Germany, mourners can sign the official book of condolences in Berlin from today. The Catholic German Bishops' Conference announced that the book would be laid out in the Apostolic Nunciature, the diplomatic representation of the Holy See in Berlin. The chief German bishop was one of those who signed the former Pope's condolences book.
The mortal shell is only the part that stays here and hopes for resurrection, but the person, the bishop, the priest, the Pope Benedict XVI.
Other mourners paying their respects today include Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to former Pope Benedict XVI inside St. Peter's Basilica. The body of Benedict XVI will lie in state in the Basilica for 3 days before his funeral. Queues built up in St. Peter's Square on Monday as the faithful made their way into the famous basilica to pay their respects. Mourners from around the world joined members of clergy in the lines waiting to far past his body. The former Pope Benedict, 95, died on December 31st morning in the Vatican after his health suddenly deteriorated over Christmas. He was Pope between 2005 and 2013 when he became the first in 600 years to step down instead of ruling for life. The Vatican said his body would lie in state from Monday in St. Peter's Basilica and that Pope Francis will preside at his funeral on Thursday morning, the 5th of January, in the same square where Benedict, who was then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, said the funeral mass for his predecessor, Pope John Paul II, in 2005.
Gold mining in Senegal plays a key role in the country's economy, but the chemicals used for processing are harming the environment and the health of the miners. Women make up half the miners and often carry their children with them, causing both to suffer the health consequences. Anika Hammerschlag reports from Kédougou, Senegal.
Medaba suffers from chronic migraines, and her daughter Awa has been coughing for as long as she can remember. Ba works as an artisanal gold miner in Senegal's far east region of Kédougou, near the borders with Mali and Guinea. Like many women at the mines, she brings her daughter to work as she is still breastfeeding.
If I don't come here to work, how will I survive? How will I make a living?
But Kédougou's gold mines are no place for children. There are scores of open pits, no safety equipment, and panners say the dust they are being exposed to is toxic.
I know we're exposed, starting with the water we drink. The well is contaminated. There's no clean water. When you drink this water, you know you'll get sick.
Once the gold is collected, the miners treat it with mercury, a heavy metal that health experts say attacks the nervous, digestive, and immune systems. It can harm the lungs and kidneys and impair hearing, balance, vision, thinking, and breathing, and cause birth defects. In Kédougou, home to 98% of Senegal's gold mines, more than 5 tons of mercury are used annually. The chemical also harms nature.
When the mercury is separated from the gold, it creates a vapor that rises into the atmosphere and clings to the leaves. Then with the rain or wind, it leaches into the ground and gets washed into the rivers, where the fish are exposed. This is why it is harmful.
Gold mining in Kédougou is also causing soil degradation and deforestation. The artisan or small-scale miners work independently in the Kédougou region, where the vast majority of Senegal's mines are located. In 2020, Senegal's Ministry of Mines and Geology launched a project to install 400 mercury-free gold processing units in Kédougou.
Everyone who comes to the center to process their gold will know that there will be no use of chemicals. We will also establish regulations that will allow us to sanction those who are treating their gold outside the center using chemicals.
The industry is critical to the country's economy and the miners' ability to make a living. But construction has yet to start and will take at least 2 years. Until then, miners like Ba say they and their children will continue to be exposed to toxic elements. Annika Hammerschlag for VOA News, Kédougou, Senegal.
Hundreds of Egyptian school children gathered in the Grand Egyptian Museum to turn piles of Lego blocks into renewable energy structures, from wind turbines to cars powered by solar energy. Teams of children aged 4 to 6 competed in the first Lego League Discover.
It's the 6th edition of the first Lego League, and children are busily sorting Lego for their project. The aim of this edition is to find solutions for storing, distributing, and transporting renewable energy by creating Lego structures. 400 pupils are divided into 80 teams of 5 from 9 Egyptian governorates. Each team has had 3 months to think of the idea and train ahead of the competition.
They are
fully aware of the sources of energy, how to save and distribute energy, and how to transport it. Through this competition, children are also learning team building and problem-solving skills.
It is a very unique opportunity for the children that they get to know more about sources of renewable energy and to understand this through Lego blocks. They learn how to build turbines and understand different types of renewable energy in more detail. For children between the ages of 5 and 7, it is honestly a great experience to know all this and to share the knowledge with society in the future, hopefully.
The championship is being held at the Grand Egyptian Museum next to the Giza Pyramids. The new museum's official opening is expected to take place this year. This year's theme focuses on energy and how children can find solutions for sustainable and clean sources of energy, how to store and distribute it, and also how to save energy. Parents and organizers watch as the children display their creations.
UNICEF's West Africa director says the organization is attempting to prevent Burkina Faso's conflict with jihadist groups from spreading to coastal countries such as Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Ivory Coast. 1/5 of schools in the country have been closed because of the violence. Henry Wilkins reports from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
1/5 of all schools in Burkina Faso are closed. More students are staying away as groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda are carrying out a brutal campaign of violence across the country. Around 700,000 students are being affected, including 13-year-old Sakinata Ouedraogo. She fled her hometown of Djibo 2 years ago and now lives in the capital, Ouagadougou. Because the government only registers displaced persons in camps far away from the capital, she is unable to apply for UN or state assistance.
A nonprofit was paying the school fees for my brother and me, so I was able to start high school. But I left the school because the association could no longer pay for us both.
While her brother continues to go to school, she works as a tailor. Her mother says the family had no choice but to leave Djibo and her children's school.
It was just too difficult. There were too many killings, attacks on police stations and gendarmeries. That's why we left, so we wouldn't get caught up in it.
The violence in Burkina Faso has been ongoing for 7 years now, and in the past 2 years, coastal countries on its southern border have been reporting violence too. Marie-Pierre Poirier, UNICEF's West and Central Africa Director, visited Burkina Faso last week with UNICEF representatives from those coastal countries to help them prepare for a crisis like that of Burkina Faso's. She spoke with VOA.
Benin, Togo, Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire are reporting attacks on the border areas. These are relatively limited, but what we can see is the rhythm is picking up. It is a reality, it's not just a possibility.
She says UNICEF is working with those countries to extend essential services in the north. They include education for displaced children and building social cohesion, something that analysts say was lacking in Burkina Faso and partly responsible for the conflict there. Sakinata, meanwhile, says she misses her history and geography classes.
In primary school, I liked history and geography because they taught us about the past and things we couldn't have imagined.
The Norwegian Refugee Council says a quarter of all the schools closed in West and Central Africa are in Burkina Faso. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
All right, so we look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I am Chamberlain, so thank you for watching. Goodbye.